Hi guys, it's me, Chester HD, and welcome to tonight's Q&A after the 2018 Belgian Grand Prix. How are we all doing on this Monday night? Have we recovered after that race? What do we think of the race? It's still a very boring one, in my opinion, but hopefully we are ready tonight to ask me some questions. Yeah, that's all that this stream is about. You guys, for 30 to 35 minutes, will ask me questions, and I will answer them as honestly as I can in the next 30 to 35 minutes. But before you guys start piling in the questions, before we get into that, don't forget to subscribe. Either on the bottom right of the screen, you can click subscribe there. Click on my channel name, you can go there and click subscribe. Or there is a link to my channel down in the description to do so. If you want to join our Discord server, please do. There's a link to that down below as well. We have almost 60 people now. It is growing very quickly at the moment, so hopefully you can join that. Also, follow me on Twitter at Chaz6110. If you want to keep up to date as to when I'm uploading and what times I'm uploading and what's going on with the channel, in case I'm not uploading on a day I said I would. Don't forget to follow me on Twitter, like this video, and comment down below your questions if you could not make the stream as well, guys. But now, let's get into the Q&A. What questions do you guys have for me tonight? Let's see what some of you guys are going to say. It has been not a great reaction, I'd say, to the Belgian Grand Prix. Before we get into questions, it's not been that great, the reaction to the race, understandably, because it was, from lap 2 until lap 44, it was very boring. So yeah, that is not good. Obviously, Spa, I thought we'd get a good race. We didn't. It was kind of similar to Canada in, at Canada, we thought we were going to get a very good race, and it turned out to be probably the worst race of 2018 so far, and one of the worst Canadian Grand Prix I think there has ever been. And Spa kind of felt the same. There was just nothing there really exciting to see other than the first lap. The race was kind of decided by what happened on the first lap. Of course, you had Bottas coming through and finishing eventually up to P4, but all of his overtakes were easy DRS passes, very easy DRS passes. So yeah, the Belgian Grand Prix was not that great. Let's now get into some questions. Scott Morgan asks, are Vettel and Ferrari now the favourites? Yes, I would say they are. Even though Hamilton still leads by 17 points, I would say that Vettel and Ferrari are the favourites, because if you look at the tracks coming up, Ferrari should be winning at the very least 75% of them. I think 90% of them they should be winning. So they should be favourites, and if they don't, make a massive mistake going forward for the rest of the season, which I'm not sure they, will, they should win the title. But of course, it's not as easy as that. Josh Basong says, your favourite F1 team? If I'm going to be totally honest, it is Ferrari. That is my favourite F1 team. Force India, I'd probably say, is my second favourite. I don't, directly support any driver or team. I do have my favourites in terms of, who I like the most. But I don't support anyone directly, because as long as we get great racing and, exciting racing, I don't really care who wins the race. I just want exciting racing. I don't, I wouldn't have cared if Williams had won yesterday and the race had been just, Silverstone-like excitement. I don't care. Gina asks, who will replace Van Dorn? Why is Van Dorn so poor? I think to replace Van Dorn, it's between Esteban Ocon and Lando Norris. I think Ocon is going to replace him. I think Norris is going to go to Toro Rosso and either be alongside Brendan Hartley or maybe Maybe Van Dorn, you don't know. He might be going to Toro Rosso. When it comes to why Van Dorn is so poor, I don't really know. I think the car being so bad as it is has played a massive part of that. You have to remember that the McLaren car is so poor right now. Just look at qualifying in Spa. Even Fernando Alonso could not get out of Q1. If he can't get out of Q1, you know the car is bad. And for McLaren to start saying that Van Dorn needs to now start out qualifying Fernando Alonso is ridiculous. Because, you know, if you put Hamilton and Vettel in the same car as Alonso, they might not even be able to out-qualify Fernando. And I'm not saying that means Vettel and Hamilton are not as good as we think. That's because I think Fernando is still one of the best on the grid. So to expect a guy who, you know, isn't one of the best, who's only been in F1 2 seasons, to out-qualify a guy who's very experienced, still one of the best on the grid, at least for me in the top 3 or 4, to expect him to out-qualify him and perform well in a car that not even Fernando can do well in, it doesn't make any sense to me. It does not make any sense. You should not compare him to Alonso. Yes, Alonso is his teammate, but the gap in terms of quality between those two is massive. So there should not be a comparison. It is absolutely ridiculous how McLaren, in my opinion, have treated Stoffel and what they've done to him in terms of giving him such awful cars. And that's the same for Fernando. He also asks, do you think there is something holding Van Dorn back? It's the McLaren car. That's what's holding Van Dorn back. The McLaren car is so bad that he can't do anything with it. He cannot do anything with that car. If Alonso's going to qualify 17th, then of course Van Dorn's going to be last, because Van Dorn is not as good as Alonso. It's not really a surprise. Josh Besong asks, what is wrong with McLaren? There's a lot of reasons as to what is wrong with them. I think poor people in charge of the team making poor decisions, like Martin Whitmarsh, Zach Brown a bit as well, Jonathan Neal, Eric Boulier when he was at the team, letting Fernando Alonso basically control what the team does, because let's be honest, that's the only reason they got rid of Honda, is because Fernando said, if you do not get rid of Honda and go to Renault, I will leave the team. And in my opinion, you should not bow to what a driver says. At the end of the day, the team is always bigger than the driver. It doesn't matter how good or big that driver is, whether it's Ayrton Senna, Michael Schumacher, or anyone. That driver is not bigger than the team. The team must take precedent over the driver. So that was a massive mistake doing what they did there. Not listening to Honda when it comes to, trying to fit the power unit inside of the car. That was a big mistake. McLaren basically dictating to Honda what they should do instead of what it should have been is the other way round, because McLaren need to remember that in F1 at the moment, yes, you can have great aero like Red Bull do, but if your engine is not working and is not, if you're not getting the best out of it, you're not going to win races. So that was a massive mistake. And I think this year has proven as well that this whole best chassis on the grid rubbish was rubbish. So there's a lot of issues that McLaren have had over the last few years, which they've caused by themselves, and here they are, the second slowest on the grid. It is clear to see that. Blessed Doob says, didn't they say Ocon is too tall for the current McLaren? That is one issue that I think is going to be rectified for next year, though, isn't it? Because I think they're making a change to the driver weight that should help out Nico Hülkenberg, who is one of the most penalised drivers when it comes to how tall he is. So hopefully that will help him out and Ocon, because Ocon is very tall. So yeah, we'll see what happens there. Ultraman Nexus, Red Bull has run out of their junior drivers. I I said this in a video on my old channel, Chazza HD. I think after Danny Kvyat was dropped in October last year, that they're going through so many drivers that now they don't have anyone left. And I said that back then, and it's come true. They don't have any, new young drivers left in the team. So what do? They have Dan Ticktum, who doesn't have a super license. If he did, he probably would be in the Toro Rosso for 2019. But from what I saw of him at Silverstone when I actually went to the WEC last weekend, he didn't look to me to be fully ready for F1. Again, that's not me saying he's bad or anything, but I just think he needs at least another year in junior formula. And after that, there isn't anyone. They're all too young and too inexperienced. And that's caused by Helmut Marko basically just hiring and firing so many new young drivers that now they don't have any left. Because if you keep firing them, no surprise, eventually you're going to run out of some. The only other driver I can think of that could fill that seat who used to be in the Red Bull program, I think, was Alexander Albon. I think he could fill that seat, but will Helmut Marko go in for him? I don't know, but I think he deserves to be in that seat. I think him and Norris at Toro Rosso would be a very good partnership, but we'll have to see what they do on that. Nikki says, if you were in Claire Williams' place, what would be the 3 first things you would change at Williams? The first thing I would do is try and look for a investor, like you see in football where an investor from Dubai goes and buys a team and now they're suddenly rich and successful when they weren't before. If I was Claire Williams, I would go and look for an investor to do something similar. Because if they can do that and if it does work out, then Williams might be able to come back up the field. But with no big investor, they're not going to. The second thing I would do is probably get rid of Paddy Lowe. Yes, he does deserve a second chance, but I don't think he's the greatest designer anyway. I think James Key is someone who should be at a team like Williams to help them out, but it looks like James Key is off to McLaren, so that's a closed door. But I think they need to improve the technical department and the aero side of the car. And after they've brought in an investor, stop employing pay drivers and actually employ drivers who are good. New young drivers who could be superstars of the future, like George Russell, or other drivers out there currently coming up through karting and Formula 3 and GP3 and whatever. Those are the three things I would do. Let me just look through the chat. Gina says Honda will have the same problem with Red Bull they had with Alonso and McLaren. I'm not sure they will, I'm not sure they will, because I think Red Bull is a much better operation in terms of the way it's ran. And I don't think they have drivers or personalities like Fernando who are going to be so, not vulgar, but, tearing the team apart. I don't think Max Verstappen is going to tear the team apart over this Honda power unit. And I think Red Bull will allow Honda the chance to develop with them, unlike what McLaren did. McLaren were expecting way too much, way too soon. Why was Renault slow in the Belgian Grand Prix? That's from Josh Besson. Basically down to the power unit. They are so slow in a straight line compared to, Haas, who have a Ferrari power unit, or Sauber. They can't claw it back in the corners where they are better. They cannot claw it back in the corners. Singapore is the only track left, I would say, where they could beat those teams, because it's all about the aerodynamics. But for the rest of the season, I don't see how Renault is going to hold off Haas. I just do not see it. If I were Claire, I would fire myself. This vinyl says, who do you think will win the championship? I think still, even though Vettel and Ferrari are so fast, I think it will be Lewis Hamilton to win the driver's title because, again, I don't trust Vettel and Ferrari as a partnership to get the job done. I still think there's plenty of mistakes left in those, in that driver and that team between now and the end of the season. And I think I trust the Hamilton and Mercedes partnership more to get the points needed to win the title. Blessed Doob, don't you think if all the teams were allowed 3 cars on the grid, it would help preserve and nurture young talent and would make the constructors very interesting? They did talk about that for introducing that in 2010, but then they backed off from that. In terms of helping out young drivers or drivers that should be on the grid, that would be great, but I fear that if we did that, we would have a customer car situation where it would just be the top manufacturers and then the rest would all have customer cars. I think that's what would happen with that. So I don't think that's ever going to happen. I don't see 3 cars, 3 car per team racing. I don't see it. Sorokin, this is Andrew Drury. Sorokin is actually quite good at setting up the car. He is a very good person at that, and he's also a very good tester, I guess you'd say. I think he would make a very good test driver for a top team because he is very good at that, and I think has gone a bit under the radar this season. I have criticised him before the season started because he is a pay driver, let's be honest. I still don't think he's one of the best on the grid, of course. I still think he's in that bottom 5 worst drivers, if you'd say. But he's better than Lance Stroll, that is for sure. He's proven that this season. I think Sorokin is very unlucky not to have scored points. I mean, yesterday he was only 10 seconds, I think, away from points. That's very, very good in a Williams. So I think Sorokin has been quite underrated this season, so he's done all right. Calimero, I think that says, Claire needs to sell her position to Ron Dennis. I don't think Ron would ever take that position. Josh Passong says, is Stroll a bad driver? He's not a bad driver. He's a good racing driver. He's just bad by F1 standards, if you know what I mean. Every driver in the field is a good racing driver, at least a good racing driver. But when it comes to F1 standards, some of them are not good enough. Like Stroll, I still think Sorokin's not good enough. Hartley, you know, drivers like that, they're good racing drivers again, but they're not good by F1 standards. And of course, the F1 standards is very, very high, in my opinion. Andrew Drury, I don't think Williams could afford a 3rd car. And that's another reason why 3rd cars won't happen and why customer cars would happen if we had 3-car teams. Is because teams like Force India, Williams, Haas, they wouldn't be able to afford it. So they'd have to basically borrow Ferraris and Mercedes. It just wouldn't work at all. Nikki says, do you think that if Stroll had driven 1 year in Formula 2, he would actually be good enough? Or do you think he should have gone the same route Gasly took? He should have gone to F2. He should have gone to F2 and proven himself against Charles Leclerc. Because remember, last season, which was Stroll's debut year, was Leclerc's championship winning year in F2. And then you could compare Leclerc, who is a very good talent, against Stroll. And then you could see how good Lance is. But, throwing him in at what was at the time the deep end, wrong decision. I know Williams needed the money, but the wrong decision. Completely the wrong decision. Hi to Lucas and Caleb. Stroll the worst F1 driver. That's from Ultraman Nexus. Yes, I agree. Which teams are the poorest? If you're talking in terms of cash, it's got to be Williams. And even though Force India have had new investment, I still don't think they're completely out of it yet. So Force India as well. But in terms of pace, obviously Williams and McLaren. Has McLaren been good enough? No way, no way. they are way off being good enough. They need to be... McLaren this season should have been fighting up there with Haas and Renault. They should have been. No excuses at all. Ultraman Nexus, that might help the reliability of the engine and performance. And he also says, I think Williams should change their engine supply from Mercedes to Ferrari. In terms of power, yeah, but you have to remember Williams get a discount from Mercedes when it comes to, you know, them getting engines, and Toto Wolff I still think has some kind of stake in Williams, so I don't think that's ever going to happen unless Toto Wolff, you know, relinquishes that stake. Could Force India finish ahead of Renault if they kept their points? That's from JB. If they were allowed to keep their points and, you know, Lawrence Stroll took over the team, yeah, I think they could have. You know, yesterday they would have gained 18 points on Renault, or they did gain 18 points on Renault. I can't remember how many points behind they were. I think it might have been 20 or 22. So yeah, they could have. They definitely could have, but obviously going to the bottom, they have no chance of that now. But I do think, guys, that they can catch McLaren. Looking at the tables, I think they can catch McLaren. Don't be surprised if they do so. Lucas asks, how many points would you give Haas so far? I don't know. I don't quite know what you mean. I'm just looking at more questions. Nikki says, how surprised were you by Gasly's P9? I was surprised, but not massively. I was more surprised, of course, by his P4 in Bahrain. But, yeah, I was surprised, but not massively. It wasn't anywhere near as shocking as what he did in Bahrain. What he did in Bahrain was amazing. Absolutely amazing. Blessed Doob says, or asks, why is it that Mercedes throw suspicion at Ferrari whenever they lose? That's just what top teams do. It's to try and throw them off kilter. It's basically, oh, if this team is now beating us, they must be cheating, when they're not. Ferrari are not cheating. They basically just found a lot of performance from the power unit, and they have improved their aero. That's all that's happened. Mercedes have not improved the power unit enough, and their aero is basically the same as last season. There's no real improvement on that side. Mercedes have no one else to blame except themselves in terms of why in terms of why they're not as quick as Ferrari. The reason they're not as quick as Ferrari is because of the reasons I just mentioned. Who's the best French/Monegasque driver on the grid? That's from JB. Out of Leclerc, Ocon, Gasly, Grosjean, I would say the best is Leclerc. Definitely Charles Leclerc. I think Gasly... I don't think Gasly is as good as Ocon. I'd say Ocon is second, and then Gasly and Grosjean are very close for third, I would say. Josh Basson asks, do you hate Mercedes? Nope, I don't. I don't really care who wins the races, as long as we get great racing. I don't care. Any more questions? Let me just look. From 10, how many points for Haas? That's from Lucas. Right, that's what you want me to answer. Out of 10, a 7, something like that. I don't think it should have been a 9 with the opportunities they've had this season, like in Australia, where they could have finished 4th and 5th if they had pulled that off, and Grosjean had not been as bad as he has been in the early part of the season. Then it should have been a 9, but I'd have to say a 7 because of those missed opportunities by Haas. Very sad, but yeah. Pecking order at Monza, Chaz. That's from Caleb. So, Ferrari fastest, for sure. Mercedes second. Red Bull third. Fourth. I would say Haas, then Force India, then 6th fastest, I'd say Sauber, 8th or 7th fastest, I'd say Toro Rosso, you know. I'd say Toro Rosso. I think the Honda power unit right now is actually performing better. 8th fastest Renault, 9th fastest McLaren, and then Williams 10th fastest. That's what I think will go down at the Italian Grand Prix. Nikki asks, how bad do you think the Renault powered teams will be at Monza, and can Toro Rosso outqualify them? Well, I've just said, I think Toro Rosso will outqualify Renault and McLaren for sure. I think Honda have really made a step forward. Lucas, what do you think of Tickdom? He's a good driver, he's a good young driver, but after what I saw of him at Silverstone when I went to the WEC weekend a week ago, I think he needs more time. I think he needs, at the very least, another year of development. What was the biggest surprise? Gasly 4th, Bahrain, or Leclerc 6th in Baku? Gasly 4th in Bahrain, the reason being is because, at least with Leclerc's car, we knew that the Sauber in a straight line was very, very quick, and that at Baku, they would be good. Nobody thought that Toro Rosso would be good at Bahrain. We all thought it'd be terrible because at the previous race, Gasly had an engine issue because of overheating. And, you know, going to Bahrain is a very hot place. So I thought they're going to struggle. And they finished in P4. So it'd have to be Gasly in Bahrain. Calimero, what position does Grosjean have to finish to keep a seat, and in which race? He doesn't need to finish in any certain position. I just think he needs to finish in the points for, say, 75-80% of the races remaining. If he finishes P7 again at Monza, and then after that there's what, 7 races left, saying 4 or 5 of them score some decent points, and I think he'll stay at Haas. I think, you know, despite his crashes, he has been very quick this season. You can see that. This is from Addiction. When will Stroll drive for Force India this year? I think he will drive this year for Force India. I just don't know when. We've heard about this weekend at Monza, but I'm not sure. We'll have to see what happens in terms of the news, but I think he will this year. I definitely think he will. Will Red Bull win another race? No, I don't think they will. I think they're that far off the pace, and I think the Renault power unit is so slow right now. I don't see them finishing or getting a race victory. I think they'll get 3 or 4 podiums, but I don't think they'll win a race. I think they're that slow in a straight line now. Nikki says or asks, do you agree with the Beat Ball that their chassis is poor while their engine is good? I know I don't. I don't know what he is smoking. I'd love to have some of what he is smoking because that is bonkers. What is he on about? The car, you know, in Hungary was proven to be better, say, than Haas aerodynamically because in the wet and also some of the sessions in the dry, Renault looked very quick aerodynamically around a aerodynamically efficient track. But at Spa, which is all about the power, they were so far off Haas. So I don't get what he's on about. If the engine was good and their aero was poor, they would have been in the points. Does anyone not see how his comments don't make sense? I don't get what he's on about. And I have to say, if Renault don't finish 4th, it's all their own fault. They have no one to blame. They had to gain, when it comes to development on the power unit, they had to gain a lot during this season. And since Austria, they've been poor compared to Haas. They've been nowhere near where they should be. Will there be an unexpected podium? I don't think there will be. Powell Nowak says, Chaz, my friend, same as you, don't believe that Ferrari will take the Drivers' World Championship this season. I truly believe this is a year under the red colour. I don't know what's happened to you to admit Ferrari is finally better. It's clear to see that Ferrari are finally better. You don't need to be, you know, siding with one team or another. It's clear to see Ferrari have the fastest car, but they don't have the best operation on the grid in terms of getting a result. I think Mercedes are better at that, and that's why Lewis Hamilton currently leads the Drivers' Championship by 17 points. And yes, Vettel and Ferrari have a very fast car, and they should win the title based on the pace of the car, but 17 points, that is a gap that Vettel needs to catch, not maintain. So there's still a lot of work for him and Ferrari to do. Still a lot of work. Who is better, Bottas or Kimi? That is from Blessed Doob. I would say Bottas. I think Bottas is better. I think it's close, but I think Bottas is slightly better than Kimi. I think Kimi, last few years, even though this year he has been quite good, I think at times he has been quite poor, and I think Bottas most of the time has been very fast, but just not as quick as his very good teammate, of course. Right, guys, we are now going to, or I am now going to answer 2 more questions. So 2 more questions, and then I will end this stream. Thank you guys for coming along. Has been good as always. Let's just see the questions that are coming through now. Right, the second from last one is from Raghav Gupta. Ferrari 1-2 at Monza. I think in qualifying they will have a 1-2. But I don't think they will in the race. I think something will go wrong for one of them, and Hamilton will end up, or Bottas, in P2. But qualifying, they really should end up in first and second. They have no real excuse for me to not be in first and second. Just looking through now. A lot of questions coming through now. Very good ones as well. Just looking. Right, I'm going to answer the final question. Will be from Lucas Rene Krebs. Sorry if I destroyed your name there. When do you think Mick Schumacher will come into F1? Now, this is a good one because I went to Silverstone. You might have heard me say that before. And he won one of the F3 races and looked very good. And I know he won in Misano in F3 this weekend. So he is doing well at the minute. But will he come into F1? I think he will, because of who his dad is and what his last name is. But will he be any good? I don't know. I haven't seen him enough to determine whether he will be any good. He is very good at the moment, and he's still young. But I don't know. I don't know whether he'll be any good. I think he will get into F1 in a very similar situation to Bruno Senna, who got into F1, let's be honest, because of his last name. And I think Mick will get into F1 eventually. But the real question for me is, will he be any good? And I don't know. It's a good thing to think about for the future. But guys, I am now going to come off this stream. Thank you guys for coming along and asking some great questions. It has been fun as always. But don't forget, guys, to subscribe to the channel. Bottom right of the screen, you can click subscribe there. Either click on my channel name or click on the link down in the description to subscribe to ChazzaHD F1. If you want to join the ChazzaHD F1 Discord server, a link to that is down in the description. You can join the community, very good community. Now with just under 60 people, is growing actually quite fast. If you want to follow me on Twitter, a link to that is down below as well. And you can follow me to keep up to date with when I'm uploading, what times, and if there is any issues as to when I'm not uploading, then you can find out on my Twitter. Also, if you have not seen my race review for the Belgian Grand Prix, it is down below. There's a link down below. So if you have not seen it yet, there's a link below and you can go and watch it and hear my opinions, my final opinions on the 2018 Belgian Grand Prix. Like this video, comment down below if you have any questions that you wanted to ask if you were here for the live stream, and I'll try and answer it after this stream goes up as a proper video. But thank you guys as ever, and I will see all of you next for the podcast tomorrow and Wednesday. So thank you all for tonight, and I will see you all tomorrow.